Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is one of the more demanding games of 2024, with more and more games like Silent Hill 2 Remake that have softer ray tracing active at all times, leaving behind rasterized lighting. Indiana Jones goes a step further and demands hardware that supports hardware-level ray tracing. It seems demanding enough for desktop hardware, so how well does it perform on a handheld like the ROG Ally Z1 Extreme? More specifically, one that has been upgraded to a higher speed 7500 megatransfers per second and higher capacity 32 gigabytes of RAM. Is it optimized enough to be at least playable, and how much RAM and VRAM does it require to achieve that? Let's take a look. Assalamu Alaikum and welcome. Today we're taking a look at the performance of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Here we have our total RAM, which is 32 gigabytes at 7500 megatransfers per second, and 16 gigs of that is assigned to the system. And the VRAM, we have 16 gigabytes assigned, which is quite a lot of VRAM. So let's see how it performs in this game. Maybe I went a bit overkill because I've been hearing this game takes a lot of VRAM, but yeah. Okay, so here we are in the game, and in the options, we are running at 900p, but we're going to test 1080p for starters, just to give you like an idea of how the performance is on 1080p. And we are running at the lowest settings, basically like whatever the lowest possible settings are. But we do have some effects on, like motion blur is on. Yeah, I'm sorry, I like motion blur, okay? And we have like texture set to high because we had the VRAM, so let's give it a try. And everything else is at low, as you can see. And resolution scaling is at 50%. That is so low. Also, the vegetation image quality or animation quality does take a lot of toll on the performance, so I have that off as well. And there we go, 37 FPS at 1080p with 50% resolution scaling, which is like, I don't know, it's not 1080p. That's all I can tell you for sure. Like 540p, 540p, but technically it's running at internally. And if you like make it actually run at like native 1080p, the performance is lackluster. You can see you cannot even reach 30 FPS at 1080p. But I mean, hey, this is a handheld, so you don't have to run it at 1080p, right? Well, technically this game is running at the lowest settings possible, but the ray tracing is always on because it doesn't have rasterized lighting. So obviously this is not the way to play. And at 900p, again, native 900p, you can get a couple extra frames. So from 27, 28, you can get to like 32 around here. And this is not even the most intensive area, by the way, because later on the game gets even more intensive in some sections of the game, especially one of the night sections of the game. And 720p, suddenly you see a big performance increase. So you can technically play it at 720p just fine with these types of frame rate, and it'll mostly stay after above 30. I can actually recommend that if you guys don't mind 720p. But my preferred setting is 900p at basically the lowest resolution scaling possible. I think you can go for like 66%. That would be like running at balanced FSR or something. And that's not that bad. Actually, it looks pretty good. And I'll talk about that later in the video. But 50% resolution scaling, which is like 450p. I hope that's right, but yeah, this is like you can see like the balance. There's a couple FPS difference between balanced and like 66% and 50%, but 50% is surprisingly not bad on a tiny screen like this. I'm not saying this is a good performance or anything, but it's playable. I mean, look at it. It actually feels very nice on the VR display of the ROG Ally. It feels very smooth. For me personally, as long as it's above 35 FPS, the experience is actually very nice, and at 40 FPS is more than very nice, you know. So this is pretty good. Walking through the forest, just giving you a little bit of a, kind of sneak peek, or not sneak peek, a little bit of an idea of how it looks like. It looks good. It actually runs pretty well. You can see the VRAM is actually over 8 gigabytes as well with the high textures. I do believe you can sort of reduce that a bit, but yeah, you'll see in cutscenes. By the way, it's a little jumpy, definitely. You're gonna see a lot of stutters and that. Yeah, give him some time. He'll be fine. But Yeah, honestly, I played it personally a bit, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, performance wise too, and gameplay wise too. The game is actually not bad, especially the story. You know, like it feels like a movie. You know, like everyone's been talking. It really does feel like a movie, because I think it is more or less based on a movie. Listen, I haven't watched much of Indiana Jones movies. Please don't hate me on that one. But you get the idea of the performance. It does get worse, like you say, like it's going to the like high 30s, and it will even go to low 30s in this area, which actually is kind of the worst I've seen. I have not seen it drop below 30 with these quality settings and stuff. So yeah, you know, that's pretty good. And if you prefer, if you don't like variable frame rate, you can actually even just lock it at 30 FPS, and it's gonna give you a very like consistent experience overall. Um, so yeah, well, I mean, there you have it. There's not much else to say. I do want to say one more thing actually. Uh, so low texture settings, in my experience, use around 6.6 gigabytes of VRAM, right around that mark. So on the base ROG Ally, the Z1 Extreme as well, it has only 16 gigs of RAM. It could technically perform well because you could just allocate more VRAM. So if you allocate maybe like 6 or 7 gigs of VRAM, it might work. But because you can see the actual RAM usage it's doing, it's only 4.5 gigabytes. I'm not sure how. So it's not that bad in RAM usage, but the VRAM usage is much higher. So it could technically work just fine on the base ROG Ally. Theoretically, like I haven't tested it. Obviously, I'm running it on a 32 gig one, but so yeah, there you have it. That's something else too. And again, you're gonna see just this one cutscene to demonstrate how many stutters you're gonna experience in cutscenes. You can feel those stutters during the cutscene. Like the cuts are very, like, they're not fun. I don't know what's up with the game where it comes to that, but I mean, a lot of games have that problem. But yeah, just take a look. You know. The amount of cuts in like the few seconds that you experienced there, the frame rate just got crazy. But at least it's in cutscenes. In actual gameplay, I haven't actually noticed any big stutters or anything, surprisingly. So yeah, that's pretty good, you know. Inside of the cave, the performance is like significantly better, as you can see. Instead of being in like the mid 30s or something, or maybe like high 30s, you're in like in the 50s. But this is obviously like a very closed environment, so that kind of makes sense. And it pretty much maintains like 40s to 50s here, which is more than playable. Like this is great, you know. But this is inside again the cave, so yeah. But if we snap back to reality, yeah, I just wanted to do that. So yeah, if you snap back to reality to the next level, which is basically the nighttime area, yeah, the performance is very good in this area actually. Again, this is an indoors environment, and we're getting like pretty much 60s, and performance is really good. You did see like a dip to 50s just before that, before I said that, but yeah, like 60s, sometimes even reaching 70s, but pretty consistently you're getting like around 60s or at least high 50s, which is pretty impressive. I mean, again, like wow. And I'm gonna skip me getting beat up in this part of the video maybe, but if you just skip the cutscene, just take a look, man. I'm not good at this. Sorry, I just couldn't bear to look at myself getting beat up for more than like a few minutes, so I had to speed run getting beat up, and here we are. Um, Look at that. Now the FPS have dropped quite a lot. At least at like in this daytime environment, still maintaining a pretty decent FPS. We're not like as consistently high in the 60s as we were, but we're pretty consistently in the 50s now. Or actually, you know what? Kind of similar. Surprisingly, very much similar. Um, so hey, again, in this indoor environment, performance is pretty nice. The VRAM actually dropped into the 7 gigabyte range now instead of the 8 gigabyte range. And remember, we are using the high textures here. And I have heard that the high textures may have some problems loading at times as well. So just keep that in mind. We're not always sure if they're fully being applied or not. But with low textures, I did see like 6.6 gigabytes of VRAM right around. So um, it's doing something at least. I'm not sure how much it's doing, but it's doing something definitely. Yeah, don't worry about my history knowledge here. It's questionable to say the least.
Well done, Indiana. So, is everything back?
Not quite.
Well, what's missing?
I think what's missing is 97% of you have not subscribed to my channel, so please subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
What was that?
Nothing, let's continue on with the video. So one thing I noticed is the shadows look really bad, as you can see, in the low quality, and the medium quality can sort of remedy that, but unfortunately we won't be using the medium quality, and I'll show you in a second why. So if you go to medium shadows, you're going to see how my FPS goes from 41 FPS to a whopping 33 FPS. Now this is in the castle area, which is basically at a nighttime area. And this area gets very intensive, one of the most intensive I've seen so far in the game. And you can see even at 720p, we're getting 33 FPS. That's insane with the shadows set to medium. So it's a very intensive setting. And I just can't recommend you to use it. I'm not sure if it's really worth it in terms of, sorry, I messed with the textures there. But yeah, so if you make it go low at 900p, you get better FPS with low shadows at 900p than you do at 720p with medium shadows. Which again, like when you already are kind of gasping for performance, I just can't recommend that. And here's my amazing fighting skills, by the way. It's just, what a beautiful fight. Look, you see those parries, man? Awesome. Just, wow. Yeah. I'm not a very good commentator, but, it is what it is, huh? Okay, I'm glad the guy realized I was... Wow, Professor. I'm glad he realized I was trespassing after, like, midway through the fight. Anyhow. So, as you climb up here, the FPS is going to drop from 45 to a whopping 33 FPS. And this is one of the most intensive times I've seen here, aside from the forest. So... just to keep that in mind, it can happen. These FPS drops can be very severe. So yeah, that's why we kind of need every bit of performance to at least stay above 30 at all times and not get dips. And surprisingly, it's doing a really good job at 900p to stay above 30. I'm honestly impressed, we have, the game still looks very nice, very stunning, visually speaking. We've got ray tracing, but I don't know if I should really talk too much about that, mainly because honestly, rasterized and backlighting can give you a lot of this same features, especially in a game where you don't always have a day-night cycle, kind of unnecessary, but that's just a personal opinion. I do like ray tracing where it works well, but I don't think you need to cram it in everything. But of course, as a developer myself too, I know that it will obviously benefit the developers and stuff like that, because you don't have to spend hours baking lighting and adjusting values and whatnot. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Also, I know this is a performance review, but the AI is very stupid. Like, it's very stupid. Like, it's wow, man. It cannot hear a lot of times. Like, you just saw me take out that guy, and the other guy was like almost barely finished the dialogue. So, hey, that's stealth games, I guess. Maybe not all stealth games, but this one is a special one. But the combat is satisfying, though, when I can actually fight. Show you another one of my stealth takedowns over here. Amazing. Just absolutely beautiful, Again, I just wanted to flex that. I'm so sorry. Let's move on to the next part. So here we're taking a look at 30 FPS locked, just to see how well does this game work at like 30 FPS lock and what can you kind of expect out of it. And right off the bat, I mean, you can see the GPU usage is like in like 70%. This is not the most intensive area, obviously, but works pretty well at 30 FPS. Like it's actually genuinely kind of surprising. And, you know, it's very stable, it's very playable. When you actually play the game, the input lag is actually better than when you have the FPS kind of just uncapped. So I just want to kind of mention that. Like, it does feel a bit more delayed. But, I mean, this game does not require super high reflexes, so you don't need super high, response time kind of stuff. But not bad, honestly, pretty good. Obviously, it doesn't feel as fluid and as smooth like it does with just unlock frame rate at the higher FPS. But yeah, I'll also save you guys from this guy's scream, you know, just to save your ears. One part is you can turn up the resolution scaling to 66%, which is basically like balanced FSR, and it actually can maintain 30 FPS like very consistently. And you can see the GPU usage is not 100%, which means that we actually have some headroom in case there are effects over whatever is going to happen. So that's pretty nice, you know, like overall, like you can technically play this at a locked 30 FPS at 66% resolution scaling, which looks really nice on the Ally, by the way, on the Ally small screen. And, you know, graphically, this game is very pleasing. We are reaching 90% GPU usage, but still no FPS drops. So, you know, so far so good. No stutters, no nothing. And I have actually done like some testing in multiple areas with this, and it's pretty good. Like even in the castle area, as you can see, it's like, you know, you have like 80% usage there. This is a pretty intensive area too. And those stutters before you saw were like loading and stuff. That was nothing to do with the actual game. But very nice, very controlled, actually usable and playable at 30 FPS locked with 66% resolution scaling, of course. And even in this area, where we were seeing like 33 FPS before with 50% resolution scaling, for some reason, look at the GPU usage again. It's like 89%. We're not actually reaching 100%. That was with 50% resolution scaling. This is with 66%. I don't know what's happening, but locking it actually gives a much better experience. More obviously, like it's, you know, unlocked. I personally prefer playing unlocked, but if you do lock it and you want a consistent experience, this is really good. And like I said, it doesn't seem to drop FPS at all, you know, even at a higher resolution scaling. So either that we're not like that bound by the resolution scaling, or maybe there's like ray tracing effects that's taking most of it, or maybe there's memory bandwidth issues. That's kind of out of my pay grade to talk about, but for the most part, it works really well. And here you go. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, please consider liking, subscribing, and supporting me on my Patreon. I would greatly appreciate that. And yeah, let me know in the comments below if there's anything else you'd like me to test. And see you guys in the next one. Assalamu Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.